This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Hi and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Tyler, and today we have a special episode because today we have two guests. My guests today are sisters Dana and Angela Chou, originally from Taiwan, currently in San Francisco Bay Area. And Dana and Angela are hosts of the Work in Progress podcast, in which they interview people about their career changes. Hi and welcome.
Hello. It's good to
Hi.
be here.
Hello.
I'm very excited you are here. So Dana and Angela interviewed me for their podcast because of my career change, because of the whole story of having a beautiful and awesome corporate career for almost 15 years, and then at one point saying no to that and deciding to become a freelancing author and journalist, and yay for that.
So that's a great move.
So as we were talking about this, we started talking about you guys and your mom, and I was like, I want to have you on my podcast, and thankfully you said yes. I'm very excited you're here. Do you want to tell me more about your podcast?
Yeah, sure. I'm excited to talk about it. So, we started this journey, I would say almost 2 years ago. And it first started as sort of a blog form. And the reason why it was started for me personally, I'm Dana, by the way, and I'll let Angela tell her side of the story as well. But for me, it was because I think I was going through some kind of phase in my life, in my career, where I was thinking about what I could do next, because I had been in biotech for about 10 years at that time, and I was let go from my work due to resources problems. And so that happened. And so it put me in a very interesting spot where I was thinking about what I should do next. And so I talked to people in my network, did sort of an informational interview with a lot of people, and they told me how they moved on, or whether they stayed at their current position doing like the similar roles as before. And I thought that the information I learned was very interesting and very helpful for other people who are in my situation. So I decided that I would put them online. And then later on, Angela gave me the very good idea of just turning this into a podcast, because it all starts with a conversation with these people anyway. And I thought that is a very good point. So that's how we started the podcast. So that's kind of my side of the story.
Angela, can we get your side of the story?
Yeah, of course. So, exactly like what Dana said, a lot of the times we're thinking about going into something we don't know and we've never done before. We start by talking to people who have done it. And so I think that the podcast format has become so popular, the last 2-3 years, for very good reasons, because it gives you a really intimate setting to talk about things that sometimes are a little easier said than like written down, and essentially letting the people we talk to tell their stories, and then our audience can hear everything firsthand. And I am so happy that we're able to be on this podcast, because I think in many ways, we're all talking about lessons learned from life, whether it's career or not. And, absolutely everyone learns so much from our mom. So we're so excited to like be here and share what we learned from our mom. And in some ways kind of helps us, like reinforce, kind of, it goes exactly along with your mission about like, you don't want to like forget what your mom taught you. And, every mom teaches every kid so differently and about so many different things, and it's a wonderful way to share lessons.
Yay! And I want to join the praise party now and and say that I loved your podcast, because as I said when I was giving you my interview, for me that was such a huge life-changing moment of deciding, of realizing what I'm doing right now on the outside looks like an amazing thing. I had this great career and a lot of money and everything was awesome, but I wasn't happy. I burned out, and I learned and I realized that I had to change something, and it takes so much courage. And this is why I think it's fantastic that there are podcasts out there like yours, that you encourage people to see that it's totally fine to completely change your career when the old situation doesn't serve you anymore in whatever shape or
Mm-hmm.
form. So yeah, yay to all of us for doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
Angela, did you also go through a career change like Dana did?
Yeah. So I will say I've gone through probably officially definitely one, and then I'm still kind of going through my second one. So I think Dana and I had really similar background in terms of like what we studied in school, but after college, we kind of went slightly different route. I feel like maybe, I don't know if this is like speaking for Dana, but she can confirm I could be wrong, but I felt like the year when we graduated was in the United States, at least, I think was at the time when a lot of situations economic wise hit really the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
It was year 2008,
Yeah.
right after the financial crisis. And I remember hearing a lot of some of my friends would, make comments like, oh, I'm just going to try to stay in school for another year. So, because this is like really bad time to go out to try to find a job. And, we didn't really have that as an option. So we just had to finish and then figure it out on ourselves. But we kind of went with what we felt the most comfortable, which was something related to biological sciences, because that was what we studied. We also studied economics, but, based on kind of my quote unquote experience and resume at the time, my most direct experience was working in a laboratory setting. So that was kind of my first job. I found something that was similar. I felt confident and comfortable doing. But a few years later, then I realized that, it was kind of a quote unquote, maybe midlife crisis, if you will, or, like a life lesson. The first time the company I was in had a layoff, and I didn't get laid off, luckily, but I realized, oh, wow, this thing is real, that, when people talk about layoffs, it's no longer something that I just read about and forget about in the news. It actually affects me as a person, even though I didn't get laid off. Then I started asking questions kind of to myself, like, how do people, senior leadership level, how do they make decisions to make sure a company continues to do well? And then I realized I had no answers for that. So that started kind of my journey to want to go back to school. And I eventually did. So I went back to get my business degree. And through that kind of working and going to school kind of journey, I met a lot of people who were doing things I had no idea were a profession. And then I learned about product management. So then it became a journey for me to transition from working primarily in like laboratory operations to product management. Then another journey kind of started in looking into, what is product management like in life science versus in biotech versus in tech. And because Dana and I are both located in the San Francisco Bay Area, so tech is the biggest industry in the Bay Area. And that's not something that I have direct training working with, or, nothing in my educational background is about coding or programming or anything along those lines. But I had the opportunity to actually do a coding boot camp about a year and a half ago, and with the support of family and my then boyfriend, I think, now became my husband.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so like a long-winded answer, yes, I have gone through a few transitions myself, and still trying to figure out this latest one. I don't know now if necessarily I want to become a software developer, even though I could and should probably still give it a shot. But I think just with that experience of leaving my full-time job and then immersing in the learning of how to code, and now I'm able to understand a lot more than before. So just still remaining in my product management role itself, I feel like I've definitely greatly benefited from having taken that slight detour, I guess.
Before we jump into talking about Mama, I would like to talk a little bit about your home country, or your country of origin. I don't know how you put it nowadays, and your journey to the US. So do you want to tell me a little bit about Taiwan?
Sure. So we spent the first 18 years in Taiwan, and afterwards we came to America to study college, because our parents have the American dream, so to speak. They want to provide better futures for their children. So I would say that Taiwan is it's a very warm country. we have really good food there, and people are very welcoming. They welcome foreign cultures, and we like celebrate, um, I would say, diversities. A lot of my friends are still there from
Mm-hmm.
where I grew up, and we would still go back from time to time. And yeah, in my memory, in my heart, it's a place with, plenty of good food. And we have something called a night market, which I'm not sure if you're aware of, but it's basically this like area on the streets where they have a bunch of street vendors.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's indoor, but mostly it's outdoor. And so they have a bunch of street vendors with food and drinks and like games you can play. And these things they'll probably start at probably 5 or 6 p.m., and they can go all the way to like 2 a.m. or something past midnight. So they're called the night markets. And so we have a lot of these. We're quite known for these kind of food places. Those are fun. And also, there's a good, I feel like compared to America, things stay open for much later. Well, maybe to compared to the American places that I live in. Because if you say New York, then yeah, New York doesn't close. But
Yeah.
uh, but I really do miss how things stay open until much later in Taiwan. That's probably why one of the reasons why I'm a night owl. But but yeah, that's how I think about Taiwan.
Taiwan is bordering China. Is there a Taiwanese language?
There's a Taiwanese dialect.
Okay.
So the official language in Taiwan is
Okay.
Mandarin, and it's the same
Okay.
thing that is spoken across China.
Mm-hmm.
That's the official language there,
Mm-hmm.
and then the dialect for Taiwan would be Taiwanese.
And how big is the country approximately population-wise?
So Google tells me that there are 23 million people
Yeah,
in Taiwan
okay.
as of 2018.
Now we learn.
Yeah, so I guess the part that I can add some color to is we were born in LA a long time ago, and we then, I think, very shortly after when we were born, we moved back to Taiwan because our family and I guess both of our parents really grew up and lived in Taiwan. So the intention was, not really for the entire family to move to the States. It was really, to give birth in LA because my aunt, my mom's closest sister, I guess, has a house in LA. So she was here and then she gave birth and then immediately went back because my dad was still working in Taiwan. And we really, for the most part, grew up there, kind of just like any other kid, from a middle class family. But I think, like Dana said, that my mom specifically, I think, really had that quote unquote American dream because she came from a pretty well-off family in the sense that her dad and our grandfather was a doctor and in a family of 8 kids. So she was, I think, the youngest sister, and she had 3 brothers, and 2 out of the 3 brothers were doctors too. So I think she had, essentially a lot of exposure to kind of higher education quite early on in her life. And also for back then, was something that was a little bit, I guess, above a middle class family would have access to. So she had definitely had that American dream where she felt like, I want my kids to have this kind of education and have this kind of exposure and be able to do things I don't necessarily have access to.
Mm-hmm.
So for a long time, yes, we grew up just like any other kids that were born and raised in Taiwan. But I think by the time when we were in late elementary or middle school, my mom had then moved us to some kind of an international school where the official curriculum is taught in English, but outside of the boundary of the school, it's, on the other street in Taiwan where we speak Mandarin. And then, I think we picked up some Taiwanese because it was a dialect that was used very heavily by the older generation. Even though we didn't really speak it, we could understand some of that.
I love it how we started talking about mom. So, mom's name is Jen.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about her and her life. Now we know what kind of a family she came from. Did she study? Did she get a chance to study?
So she finished college, graduated, and she majored in economics, I believe. She wanted us to study economic or business related topics when we went to college. The part of Taiwan that we lived in is the capital of Taiwan, called Taipei, but her family originally is from another part of Taiwan, which I think is the middle part of Taiwan. I can't really remember the city. The siblings grew up and then they moved to the capital to work here, and that's where we spent the first part of our lives, is actually in like a different part of the country. Yeah, Angela, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Our mom received, I think, an equivalent of a bachelor's degree today. And she, I think, worked a few years. And somehow I think she had probably a very brief career in some kind of a stock trading. And I don't remember exactly what it was called. And the only reason why I remembered it, though, was because kind of throughout her time with us, and then, later on when we got a little bit older and understood what it was, she was doing some trading as an individual investor when she was quote unquote a housewife. So I think she stopped officially working for a company after we were born to take care of us. And, I guess, I don't know if we mentioned that we are twins. So we basically, I think the story that they love to tell is, once I put one baby down, the other one will be crying. So it was basically around the clock kind of job, yes, for a new mom.
Yeah, and the aunt had to come over to rescue because she couldn't deal with it all by herself, because 2 crying babies for a new mom was very hard.
Did she marry young? Do you know anything about how they met or got married? Or
It's kind of a fun story. I know that she didn't marry young. So like for the standard at their time, she got married when she was 30, and my dad was 38. I know that the marriage in the beginning wasn't very like supported. So there was that tension going on
and
between
supported by family, I guess, is what Dana is trying to say, because she is from a pretty well-off family with, like well-regarded siblings, and I guess grandfather was a doctor, and my dad, I think, came from a probably humble family in the village as well. Yeah. And I think not everyone in his family had the same kind of level of education and whatnot. And also, like, one of the stories that I feel like the aunts would tell us is, oh, we used to want to like set up blind dates for your mom and some doctors, but she always said no because she really liked her father. So we used to hear those stories quite often. I think the family had hoped that my mom would choose somebody who was a doctor or a lawyer, but she picked someone, which was my dad, and he was a business person. He worked for Toyota in Taiwan for a very long time, but I think back in the days and just kind of in the culture that they were in, definitely doctors and lawyers were regarded the highest, and business people were kind of just like, okay, not very impressed. And why did you pick this guy? We don't really know. I guess you just really liked him.
But what's interesting, ladies? This is the story I hear. And it's funny because we grew up with this idea of women marrying rich, In the 50 interviews I've never heard my mom marry this rich guy who's my dad. I always hear about these women who come from wealthy families or higher class families choosing to marry men who come from more humble backgrounds. That's interesting, isn't it?
Interesting. Yeah.
How did she take the move to United States?
So she never did move here. So when she gave birth, she was kind of doing a lot of traveling on her own. And then that's why she visited. She visited several different places. I know she also came up to San Francisco because I found an old family photo of her standing in front of, Angela, you know that the Powell Street cable car? Yes, and I was so surprised because that was like the downtown. I live in San Francisco and I like the downtown area. I would go there a lot. So it was like such a magical moment when I found out that, oh, my mom took a photo of, herself when she was visiting here, and she was pregnant at the time. And so so she was just doing a lot of traveling, and then she ended up in LA. And so that's how it happened. But then I guess she did live here for a while.
Because her sister was living in LA. That was the main reason.
Our aunt probably took her around. But then she did live here for a while, but she never really moved here. like, officially, because my dad was still working in Taiwan at the time.
When did you guys lose her? How old were you?
We were 17.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. So, and that was 2003.
So you lost your mom and then you moved countries?
So 2003, we started senior year. That was the last year of high school. And on the very same day, the first day of school, our mom passed away. So it was a very chaotic. Yeah, it was. We obviously didn't make it to school.
Yeah.
We couldn't go. But I remember it was the same morning. It was very traumatic. But that was 2003, and we were 17. A year later, we moved to United States to go to college. So things moved very quickly.
It's great you had each other.
Yeah. I think my mom's intention had always been, and I think part of that was due to all the traveling and, all the things that she got to see when she was pregnant before giving birth to us in the United States, that, she, I think, never directly said it to us, but I think it was implied, and we could feel that in many ways she had wanted to be able to kind of study in a different country, because of all the different opportunities that she saw when she was traveling. And I think because her sister had a place in LA, so she stayed in LA probably for a few months before giving birth to us. And I think she wanted to do that so that we would then, be able to become citizens and then come to the US a lot easier. And like Dana said, we lost her the first day of senior year in high school. It was honestly like a blur how it all happened. But long story short was she had breast cancer, I think, when we were still in middle school. And at the time, I think we were able to get it under control for a few years. But then it came back, and it got worse. And eventually, she decided that she didn't want treatment anymore. So we lost her on the first day of our high school senior year. And then we moved within that after the end of that school year, because it was always her intention for us to come to the United States for college.
Let's jump into her lessons. I can't wait to learn from Mama Jen. Who wants to go first?
Angela, do you want to go first?
Yeah, because I wrote these down, and I feel like the first one that I think was probably like my number one lesson from her was love yourself more than others. And I feel like she had joked about different things, one way or another, but they, to me, all kind of boil down to the concept of loving yourself first and putting yourself first. And I think we can all I can think of a few things to say about why it's important to love yourself first, because, you yourself definitely is the most important in many ways, because once you take care of yourself, then you have the bandwidth, the capacity to think about others around you. And I think she used to joke about things like, I think this is when we were in probably middle school or high school, like she would say things like, when you grow up, you should find a guy that's younger than you, that makes more money than you. And I don't think she necessarily meant that, but I think behind those jokes, what she was trying to say was, don't let certain things stop you from doing things that you enjoy. And kind of brings in another lesson that I feel like is related, was the importance of independence. I think she just wanted us to love ourselves, in the sense that if there are things that we want to do, make sure we see that as a priority, because, when you kind of treat yourself nicely and treat yourself well, then you are then a whole person functioning at your highest capability. And then you can then do many other things that you care about, which can bleed into being a better functioning person for the society, for the company, or for the family that you are part of, and make everyone else happier and better.
Do you have more, or should we let Dana share her?
Oh yeah, I don't know if Dana thought those were the lessons that she learned from our mom, so I'm curious to see what she has to say about those.
There are many, many things I took away from my mom. But one of the ones that actually stand out to me is that She's a very unique person. She has a very good sense of style. And I remember when we were little, she would always take us to the bookstores and she would read about like fashion and like jewelry design. And she would teach herself how to design jewelry. And then she would go to those trade shows or something and she would buy diamonds and stone, different kinds of stones, and she would put together a design and take it to a jeweler and ask them to make it for her. So what I learned from this is that you don't have to buy what's available in the market. You can go out there, design something, and make it your own. And I think that that is a very valuable lesson that I learned from her. She would do the same thing with clothes too. She would read magazines and say, you know, oh, I like this style, I like that style. She had a little bit of a baby weight, so some of the clothes wouldn't fit her, and so she would just, you know, go to those fabric stores, get a nice cut of fabric that she likes, and just design things for herself and take it to a tailor and just make a dress for herself. And so I think what I learned from her is that you don't need to conform to the standards. You can find things that work very well for you by making them work for you. You know, you don't have to conform. And I think that's something that I don't really hear other people talk about. I mean, in other ways, I'm sure that other mothers teach their kids, you know, this lesson. But I think that from her, I learned this lesson through like these things that she did.
Yeah, this is something that I also like. I wrote down. I kind of lumped all of basically everything Dana just said now into this lesson that I call "Dare to be different." I don't think she ever said that, oh, you must try to be different, or don't be worried if you're different. But she really just embodied that, I think, in herself, that, like Dana said, she is, I guess today you would call her to be like a curvier woman, but back in the days, there was not a term for anything like that. So when she found out that, oh, well, if I go to the department store, things that are, you know, on the shelves may not fit me the way I would like them to, that's okay. I'm going to go to those fabric stores. I'm going to design what I want to wear and then have them made for myself. And the same goes with jewelry. That's one of her, like, I think greatest passions is she likes a few gemstones like emeralds and I think rubies and sapphire. And she completely supported herself through that quote unquote passion, which was going to different trade shows, learning about all the different gemstones and what makes one, you know, better in quality, more expensive than others. And it was really her, honestly, very passionate little side hobby that she never took money from anyone else to build her collection. And it was not something that she had wanted to like make money off of, but it was something that she enjoyed and she collected using her money that she made trading stocks as a housewife, which I thought for her time was pretty amazing. And now that I feel like, yeah, I don't know if I can like trade stocks as a housewife. Like I don't know anything about the stock market, but she kind of learned that when, you know, during her brief career and then also her school. But I think just like what Dana said, that, you know, she wanted something and then she would support herself to be able to have the means to do that. And it was never something that, you know, she wouldn't ask anyone to help her with when it comes to buying any kind of jewelry that she wanted because she made the money herself. And this to me really stands out as, you know, kind of a similar lesson like about loving yourself, because I think she had always valued independence, both financially and like mentally. So even though that, yes, my dad did support, I think, the family on many different fronts, but she never stopped being financially independent herself. And I think another thing about independence is she is definitely someone that is very okay with going to places and doing things alone. And she had really close relationships with, I think, a few of her siblings. They would do a lot of things together, but she would totally be okay with, like, let's say we're going to go to the coffee shop by myself, and she would totally be okay with doing that alone as well. And then, you know, when we got older, she would take us to coffee shops and give us, like, you know, show us what she liked. And I'm sure she enjoyed having us following her around, doing the things that she enjoyed doing. But she was never someone that like needed to have somebody accompany her if she wanted to do something. And if she kind of put her mind to it, she would just do it.
I love this lesson on daring to be unique. And as Dana said, you don't hear this very often, and especially on, if you are a little different, not trying to adapt yourself to fashion
Mhm.
or your surrounding, but adapting things, outside things, towards you. I think
Yeah.
it's a very, very important lesson, and especially today when we just go and buy stuff and everybody wears the same things and looks the same no matter where in the world. Do we have more?
I think something that she had always thought was very, very valuable was reading as a habit and a lifestyle. I think
Mm-hmm.
she always used to say that, some people, if they do get to write a book or some books, sometimes it's one book that they write and they write about their entire life, all of the lessons they learned in 40, 50, 60 years. And it does not take you 40, 50, 60 years to read a book. It's such a huge difference in terms of like the amount and the value of knowledge that you can obtain by reading, as opposed to the person that has to, kind of accumulate all of those lessons and then kind of distill that into a book. So she really emphasized reading when we were younger. And there used to be a bookstore in Taiwan that was like, that would open like 24/7. And that was really kind of like our happy place together. Like I remember on the weekends or like Fridays, she would take us there and we would kind of go off into our own little corner. We would each find a book and read for like 2-3 hours. And then after 2-3 hours, we gather at some coffee shop and we would talk about what we each read.
Oh,
And
that's nice.
yeah, it was a really, really, it was just our ritual that was so great. I remember spending many, many summers just doing that on the weekends. And, there was no limit on what you're reading. You could be reading a comic if you want. Like, it doesn't even need to be a book. But it was about going through that, kind of go into different areas of the bookstore, find a genre that interests you and find something and read it and then share that with people. So essentially a book club, I guess, if you will. But it was so fun
Yeah.
doing it, and I love that.
I'm curious to find out about if there was anything you guys wish she taught you, if there was anything she was not able to teach you, anything important.
So I guess this is a little, I guess, kind of personal. I don't know. I've never talked to anyone about this. Certainly not Angela. So I hope I don't offend Angela. I'm not worried about offending other people because I don't really care.
I
But
love this.
so
I just care about Angela. I don't care about other people. Now,
yeah, 'cause I
now
think
Angela can't be
'cause I
offended,
think
I
whatever
know,
you
now
say.
I can.
because I think she's like the one that's gonna care about the most. So anyway, so I growing up, I know that my mom and my dad's relationship actually was not very good. They didn't have the happiest marriage, and I actually didn't know about this until I had a chance when I was older, and I had the chance to talk to other friends and see how their parents or learn about how they interact through my friends. So it was I think a lot of things clicked when I was older and kind of learned about what a happy marriage possibly looks like and what an unhappy marriage looks like. And I feel like I would categorize my parents' marriage as not so happy. Um, and I wish that they wouldn't stick together just for the kids. And I think that's it's finding the courage to walk away is important, I think. And I think that I don't think I don't really want to be the baggage of them, sticking together.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that they should definitely go be happier people on their own and, just deal with the kids' situation later. And, because, I mean, their marriage lasted for at least 20, 30 years. And if you're quite unhappy for those 20, 30 years, I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's right to be stuck being unhappy for the kids. If they were really that unhappy, I wish that they would separate and not be married, just quote unquote for the kids. I guess another thing is that I wish she communicated more. I think she's the type of person that holds things to herself, and maybe because we were too young, so she probably didn't want to trouble us with, like the deeper or
Yeah.
the harder things in life, right? And I can see that I might do that. I might choose to do that if I have a kid someday. So I don't really know. Maybe it's her personality, or she just doesn't want to, tell us, difficult things. But I wish that she would communicate with us more and let us know more if things were difficult at home. Because I think growing up, we're very, very well shielded from the world, and also from like any trouble that they were having. I don't really know that if they were having any trouble, because they didn't really tell me or tell Angela. But I think there were signs that I could tell that, like later on when I grew up, I'd realized that, oh, maybe things weren't so happy at home because of the things that I observed. But I wish that she could communicate with us more. And also, if they were unhappy in the marriage, I wish that they would have separated earlier. I would not want to be the person holding them back from having a happier life. Yeah. But then again, I never really got to confirm that.
Yeah. This is beautiful that you share it, because it's important for us, for the new generations, to collect the courage if things don't work out, to leave. I think it's inspiring us to stand to ourselves and say, look, I'm not happy in this.
Yeah. So that's my thing.
Thank you.
I hope I didn't offend
Angela, are you offended?
No, not at all. I think the time definitely has changed since, like when we were younger, and then now that we are older and we have our own marriage as well. I think back in the days, and especially I think probably in Taiwan, maybe the convention and, like the traditional thinking would be the adults will figure out what's going on, and we don't need to tell the kids, if there are any troubles or issues going on. I think this used to be kind of the thinking for back in the days, but I think hoping that the times are different, and I think definitely the people like our generation, we're thinking very differently about marriage and kind of self-identity. One thing that I feel like, I also didn't learn from my mom, it's also related to, I think, how she managed her marriage with my dad, was I wish that she didn't use that to define any aspect of herself. Because I remember this was, when she was already getting sick and pretty serious and it was getting worse, she would say things to me, and I think maybe probably to Dana as well, and she was basically apologizing for, oh, I'm so sorry that this is going on, and, that you're having to deal with this when you're still so young. And I felt like it was absolutely not her fault. And, like whether it's her marriage issue with my dad or her health, none of those should really define her as a person. And just kind of growing up and remembering that still to this day, I think the lesson I feel like I am learning from that is to not let, I guess, aspects of your life define you as a person. And even if the marriage isn't as great as what you had hoped it to be, maybe there are ways to figure out how to make it work. And if it really isn't working out, then like Dana said, I wish that she would just, have the courage to walk away from that and not feel that she needs to be obligated to stay within it for the kids. Because, going back to, I feel like the biggest lesson I learned from her was love yourself more than others. So I guess maybe in that aspect, she didn't really act that out, as, she didn't really use that lesson to guide herself in life in that regard. And I wish that she had. I wish that in that respect, she had loved herself more than maybe even her own kids, because as her kid, I wanted her to be the happiest that she could be. And that didn't necessarily mean that she had to stay within a marriage that wasn't happy or anything of those things, anything like that. And again, don't let even a disease define you as a mother. Like, it has nothing to do with her capability or how good of a mother she was. And I just wish that she didn't think that way. And to me, it's kind of like a lesson for myself to not ever think about myself and how good of a mom I am if and when I become a mom in the future. Because I really believe that all moms are great moms and they're really trying their best. And There's, you can never control everything in life, right? So don't let any single aspect define you and how good you are as a person.
Wow, ladies, thank you. These are so beautiful and deep. Do you have anything more to add before we recap and go back through the lessons we shared?
I think if anyone's listening and their mom is still around, I think, the only thing I would like to say is, definitely cherish that time. And if and when there is an opportunity, think about what you've learned from your mom and your parents. It doesn't have to be just the mom. I think a lot of the times we learn so much from people and events and things in life without even knowing that we are learning and what the lessons really are. So that's all I have to say.
And do you think you should talk to them more? Now I wish I asked more questions. I had such a close relationship with my mom and we talked so much. And only after I lost her, I was like, oh, I didn't ask her this and this. And, just ask her about her experience and her motivation and why she did things the way she did it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think as maybe this will definitely change how I want to have the kind of relationship I want to have with my child if I do have kids in the future. It's be a little bit more willing to be vulnerable and be willing to share, knowing that maybe kids don't want to ask you, because I felt weird asking my mom about certain things. But if we can just all get over that, then we start a lot more conversation and, share a lot more.
Dana, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that's it. And I think that Angela added the very good point that she added was something that I completely agree with. Yeah.
So you guys need to help me a little bit. I was writing notes. Let's recap what we learned. So we learned to love yourself, to be independent, to dare to be unique.
Yep.
And this we'll learn through Mama Jen designing her clothes and her jewelry. I have a quote: "You don't need to conform to the standard." And another quote: "Dare to be different."
Yep.
I wrote down that she stayed financially independent. I love that she, even as a housewife, managed to earn money to follow her passion about jewelry and clothes.
Yeah.
Are you guys wearing the jewelry? I hope you are.
Yes. Oh, we are. Yes. I just wore them yesterday. I just wore one yesterday.
I wrote down she did things alone as well, which I like. I have reading in capital letters, that you can learn so much experience from books and other people's lives. And then what you guys wish she taught you was having the courage to walk away when things don't work out. That she communicated more, especially about harder things in life.
Yes.
And that she wouldn't let the marriage or the disease, so I wrote down outside aspects, define who she really was.
Yep.
Did I miss something?
No, I think you got everything.
And here's another one. And love yourself for real, because I like it how Angela said your mom was trying to teach you to love yourself, but then maybe by staying in a marriage that maybe wasn't so happy, she didn't really show it to you guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Wonderful.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for capturing that last one. I felt a little bad saying that, because it's almost like saying she did something wrong, but I just wanted to.
It's very interesting to have an example of the difference between showing your kids a lesson and teaching them a lesson. Because as one of my guests kept on repeating, it's one thing what you tell your kids and the other thing what you show them. And this is a beautiful example of what you tell them versus what you show them.
Yes.
Wow, thank you so much for being my guest. I think we shared some very, very important and beautiful lessons with our listeners.
Yeah. I was going to say, this feels like a therapy session.
Yeah, for sure.
It was really, it's good. It's good. It put things in perspective. And I think that, I don't know, when she first passed away, I was really sad for a long, long, long time. I think it was more than 10 years that I was sad. And then one day I realized that she's actually no longer suffering. And so I felt kind of stupid for being sad. But it wasn't until today that we sat down and talk about mom and talk about her life, from the beginning to, I guess, not the end. We didn't talk about the end much, but we talked about her life, where she came from, and like what we learned from her. And I feel like it's kind of, I don't know, it kind of concluded her in a nice way. And now when I think about her, I don't just think about the bits and pieces, maybe like the last few years that were difficult, but also I am reminded, her, like before she was sick, and she was her mom, and the fun things we used to do together. So I think this has been really nice.
No, I'm so deeply touched by what you said. I feel it.
Mhm. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
the opportunity.
If you enjoy Thank You Mama and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyouMama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Teider, that's Tajder. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.